Welcome to This Week in Local, a Localogy podcast featuring lively conversations about the local digital ecosystem, hosted by Localogy analysts Mike Boland and Charles Laughlin.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Local. I'm Charles Laughlin, senior analyst from Localogy, joined by my colleague Mike Boland. Mike, how are you today?
Hi, Charlie.
Great. So, Mike, tell us what you're working on this week.
Sure. So this week we started to notice something, which is sort of not necessarily a new trend, but sort of an inflection of an existing trend, which is that subscription revenue seems to be sort of a new shiny thing in sort of tech and media worlds. And, you know, like I said, this has been going on for a while, but it sort of reached critical mass this week when Meta revealed that it's going to follow Twitter Blue's footsteps in creating a paid tier for its users. And like Twitter, the sort of main hook is going to be the ability to authenticate your account or profile. So, you know, it's all about the blue badges and the blue check marks, and that's what people are paying for that sort of validation. Beyond those high level moves, a few others that we've been tracking over time, especially ones that are less high profile, less discussed, but potentially more successful. And in that bucket, I put Snapchat Plus, which is one I've been tracking for the last year and a half. And it's actually the score to beat right now because it has 2 million paid subscribers, and that's growing pretty quickly. It only had 1 million about 8 months ago. And that has a lot to do with a well-devised feature set and price point, and I'll get into that in a minute. But further going down this list of all of these sort of points of validation for these subscription models, Apple announced in its Q1 earnings, which is essentially the rest of the world's Q4. Apple sort of has a fiscal year calendar that's like 1 quarter off for a lot of reasons having to do with the holiday quarter. But anyway, during its Q1 earnings, it reached record subscribers, 935 million. Now that's different than the social players I just mentioned, because here we're talking about Apple sort of subscription products, you know, everything from iCloud to Apple TV Plus. But it's interesting, though all of these sort of subscription products are a little bit different in what they're offering, there's one sort of common thread which we picked up on this week, which is that it's all about revenue diversification. So in each case, it's all about creating an alternative revenue stream, and not only an alternative revenue stream, but a very attractive one. So when it comes to different types of income, subscriptions are very attractive because it boosts, you know, recurring revenue and MRR and those types of metrics. But the actual, again, the actual product model and the need for diversification. So the diversification is the common thread, but the need for diversification, interestingly, is different for each of these players. So for Apple, the thing that's driving it towards this, you know, diversified alternate revenue stream is that it's sort of one of those common maturation dilemmas. So Apple, of course, a massive company, and as your quarterly revenue base starts to grow into like the 10 and 11 digit sums, it's harder to achieve growth because that sort of denominator means that percentage growth, the larger it becomes, or sorry, larger the denominator becomes, the growth mathematically declines. It's a common
The law of large numbers. Right?
Yeah, the law of large numbers. Thank you. That's a quicker way of saying it. That's the reason Amazon's going after ad revenue. Like, we see that a lot. It's nothing new, but that's what's driving Apple. And, you know, not only is it, you know, a younger, less mature revenue source that's going to ramp up quickly, but also it's less saturated. When we're talking about all these sort of subscription products, it's not the sort of supply side saturation they're currently facing with like the iPhone, right? Which is just sort of oversupplied and, you know, a mature product. Now, moving on to those social players, what's driving them? It's not that sort of financial maturation, although that's sort of the case with Meta, but it's more about diversifying in the face of all the headwinds they're seeing for their core ad business. You know, it's no secret that ad-supported social players are seeing all of these declines in sort of a perfect storm that really includes a lot of things. It's sort of the platform level privacy reform like Apple's ATT. There's an economic downturn that tends to erode brand advertising budgets. And then, of course, there's TikTok, which further fragments the supply side and competes for those same ad dollars. So for all these reasons, you got Snap, you got Meta, and TikTok, which are, sort of trying to sort of diversify from ad revenue is still the core, but diversify from that. So they're less beholden to these sort of, volatile factors. So anyway, you add it all up, all these players are just definitely compelled to find new revenue streams, and subscription it seems to be the go-to thing for all these folks. And I was thinking why that is. And one of the reasons is that sort of customers or users paying for things in addition to enduring ads is something that's already been validated. It's kind of a safe bet because the last sort of beleaguered ad industry that went through this was the news media, right? And they have validated that people will pay for the right content. And you got examples like the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, The Economist. If it's the right content and the right model, they will pay for it. So that's been validated to a degree. But you have to actually find that sweet spot in terms of the product market fit. And that gets back to what I mentioned earlier, where I think Snapchat is sort of leading on that measure now. It's sort of struck the right chord. And you can see that in the subscriber numbers. That subscriber growth doesn't lie. Also, if you just look at on paper what that feature set is, it's pretty attractive. And I'll just give you a few examples to sort of close off here. So in Snapchat Plus, which only costs $4 a month, it allows you to have better sort of analytics and insights. So if you're a brand marketer or an influencer, $4 a month is nothing to get the sort of right insights to drive those high stakes decisions about the type of content you're creating, what's resonating, when should you post, all of these types of things. And then another good Snapchat Plus feature that's really sort of resonated, which I think just represents some potentially transferable lessons in this early stage of how do we set up these subscription products. Another thing they're doing is any user who pays that $3 a month can get this sort of sticky above the fold placement for the comments they leave on others' posts or stories. So this means essentially you can have top billing for your comment on the comment thread for posts or stories from high profile influencers like, Kardashians or, just these high profile things. That visibility you can get at the top of the comment thread on anything they post is well worth the $4 for a lot of folks. So the reason I mentioned those sort of features is, again, this is very early in the sort of the strategy around devising the pricing models and the product models for these subscription products. So I think looking at a shiny example like Snapchat Plus is sort of valuable at this stage to reverse engineer like what flies or doesn't. And I think that, Meta and Twitter, their subscription products, it's so early, but it's getting a lot of flack in the media so far. Twitter Blue is one that actually hasn't performed well. That could be because of that sort of feature set. It could be because Twitter in general is just so schizophrenic these days. So sort of, I think the bottom line is across the board, this will sort of be a moving target about what resonates with users. But I think, Snapchat Plus is a good example of what's working. And we're going to continue to watch this and track it as this subscription revenue increasingly becomes the sort of a critical part of the revenue mix, of otherwise ad-supported media and tech companies, because I think this is going to be an important shift we continue to see.
Thanks, Mike. I think,
why don't we take a quick break and then we'll come back.
Hi everyone, it's Mike Boland, Senior Analyst at Localogy, here to tell you about L23. It's our annual flagship event, held this year in sunny San Diego, Coronado Bay to be exact, and it's all about charting the course of local commerce and tackling all of the factors and topics that continue to impact the business of local media, advertising, and commerce. So we've got a solid speaker lineup already, and we'd love to see you in Coronado Bay, April 17th through 19th, and you can find out more at localogy.com. Now back to our episode.
and we're back. You mentioned the ad-supported piece. I think there's a lot of conversations around, how much of a weakness it is to be over-reliant on ad revenue, as a business model. What my question is, you mentioned the Snap Plus feature set. It sounds like something that marketers and creators will want. What about an ordinary Snap user?
Yeah.
And is that a gating factor on the potential size of this revenue stream for Snapchat?
Yeah, they want to cast a wide net, obviously.
Mhm.
And I think they actually have appealed to both. Like the two features I mentioned, and there are several others, but the two features I mentioned sort of appeal to both. They don't both appeal to both, but one of them hits each of those sort of
Okay.
personas you mentioned. Like the analytics definitely appeals to the brands and the influencers, those that are just like making high stakes
Right.
decisions about when they post, what they post. They want to have the feedback loop of what's working and just course correct
Yeah.
accordingly. So that sort of scratches their itch. The normal user, I think that second one I mentioned is pretty appealing, where you can sort of be atop the comment thread of these high profile influencers when you comment on what they're doing. Which otherwise is, I think, just like a chronological feed. So it just, if you don't have Snapchat Plus, you don't have that top billing, your comment is going to quickly get buried in the sort of time decay of, other people posting.
Right.
But that sort of sticky top billing is pretty cool for just an average Joe that wants to get their handle seen by all these folks that are looking at the influencer, comment threads.
But then again, isn't that still more appealing to somebody who's trying to build an audience to monetize or to build a following?
That too. Yeah. If you're trying to do
Mhm.
some, social hacking and just get a lot of followers quick, that top billing is also something that's cool for you.
Sure.
I guess for the average person, it's more of a vanity thing. And we all know the power of the sort of social dopamine stuff. So, I mean, that's
Vanity
what drives
does
it.
sell. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that just
Yeah.
drives that. But you're right. In addition, people that want to gain followers quick could also benefit from that, comment thread positioning.
You mentioned blue check marks on Twitter. When Elon, I forgot when he bought it last year. What was it? The summer? I forget.
Yeah. Fall.
They sort of like, should we charge $8 for verification? Should we charge $16? I forgot the numbers that were floating around. They were all, $20 a month, whatever it was.
Right.
And none of it seemed to take off, even though the blue check mark is sort of stock and trade in Twitter. If you're part of blue check mark Twitter, that means you're authenticated and you're
You're a big deal.
journalist or you're somebody.
Yeah.
Now that sort of lost all its meaning, right? I'm wondering how Twitter kind of course corrects and gets that back on track where they can have some sort of meaningful identity verification.
Yeah, I mean, it dilutes the value of the blue check mark if anyone can get one. And of course
If it
that
means
was that,
anything anymore. Yeah.
of course that there was that comical sort of backlash where
Mhm.
everyone jumped on, paid for it, and then pretended they were Elon Musk or whomever. Or
Pretended they didn't. Yeah.
very comical
then
outcome.
became embarrassed that they had actually paid for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that really blew up in his face. So it's funny what Meta is now doing to prevent that is they are putting a hold on any, profile changes, picture changes, name changes in the lead up to this so that no one can sort of game the system in that way that, Twitter did not see
And
coming.
become someone else.
Yeah.
Become a verified someone you're not.
Yeah. And a lot of people have spoken up with this meta move like they did with Twitter. Not just as it devalues the veracity of the blue check mark, because now it's like anything can just pay $8 for, but a lot of people now are sort of giving Meta grief for the fact that not only can they just, pay to get it, but shouldn't that be just part of the framework of the platform to make a strong, healthy platform, et cetera, et cetera? And, Mark Zuckerberg, who always has a quick answer, essentially said, well, in order to do this, we have to like verify through government IDs and this whole process that requires a cost to us. So to provide this service for people that really want to have that verifiable, this is really me saying this thing on this social network, it's a cost to us. So we sort of have to pay or charge for this premium service. I don't know how much of that is true. It's probably there is some cost involved, but that's the other part that they're getting grief for is like, yeah, shouldn't this just be part of the, what you offer?
Free.
Like,
and are we going to be missing something culturally? I don't know.
Yeah.
Hard question. I mean, having a bunch of bots chase people and harass them no one is in favor of that,
Right.
But if they're going to eliminate the ability to create these sort of parody accounts and satire accounts, I'm not sure that that's happening, but I think it would be a shame if that were the case. With that said, why don't we end it there? Mike, do you want to read us out?
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening. This has been This Week in Local. This episode was brought to you by L23, Localogy's flagship event taking place this year in San Diego, April 17th through 19th. And you can find out more at localogy.com. So stay tuned every week for more episodes of This Week in Local. You can find the show on all major podcast networks. Please subscribe, like, and comment. So I'm Mike Boland with Charles Laughlin. Thanks for listening and see you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Localogy's This Week in Local with Mike Boland and Charles Laughlin. Be sure to subscribe for more.